Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Enough to Keep Going podcast. This is episode number 423 for Monday, February 9th, 2026. That's right. We're a day later than usual. We had here in the States at least, there was the Super Bowl. So everybody was glued to their seats in that exciting game, especially that first half. Um, but, anyways, I'm your host, Master99. With me tonight, we have one Mr. DBQ Hams. DB, how are you? How was your Super Bowl?
It was just fine. Right. I expected a defensive game, and it certainly lived up to that, at least for the first three quarters. Um, but yeah, no, it was a fun change of pace. My son, who's in college, had a group of friends over, and so we didn't cook at all, and just bummed off all the appetizers that they brought. So,
Nice.
which was great. It was a nice change of pace.
Nice. Very good. And Mr. Game Logic, how are you doing, sir? How was your Super Bowl, if you watched it?
It was good. It sounded like the little snark there was a little sour grapes.
Oh, no. Hey, the Patriots lost, so I'm happy. That's all I cared about.
Yeah, there's plenty of Patriots hate out there too. So whether you're mad that the one team put your team out of the playoffs or that another team or you just hate the Patriots, either way, I'm sure people had lots of fun.
Yes, it was fine though. I mean, I watched like the first half, and I was kind of had my fill. I'm not too excited about either team, so it was fine, whatever it was. But anyway, if you have never watched us before, first up we'll have the main GX stories where we kind of go through the games, kind of, I guess, more important. No, I don't want to say important, but just kind of we played a little bit more, maybe or so, or just want to talk about a little bit more from this past week. Then we'll jump into the main news headlines. Excuse me, and then go into our round robin. Excuse me, playlist where it's kind of everything else that we've been playing throughout the week, and then kind of cap it off with what's coming up for this coming week as far as new releases. So I will start off with segment one, our main GX stories, with a game called Achilles Survivor. Now, there's another one. I was going to look it up too, and I forgot. Called Achilles, I think Unleashed or something like that. I can't remember the actual name of it. That's more of kind of look like a Diablo-esque style, but they're calling it more like a Souls-like, which I thought was kind of weird because I've never seen a Souls-like in that kind of top-down three-quarters perspective. But that same company made another game called Achilles Survivor, which is more of like Vampire Survivors, like, Brotato, those type of games, kind of reverse bullet hell is another term I've heard too, where you're kind of going around this map. And then you have, your different powers that you have. I think you start off with just like a spear because you're Achilles, obviously. That's, kind of old world god or demigod from back in the day. And then it's not a sprite based game. It's 3D. Everything is 3D rendered. So enemies, yourself, the environment and stuff like that. So I've been kind of plugging away at that actually for the last couple weeks. I bought that a couple weeks ago, and I've been kind of in and out of that game along with some other stuff that I'll talk about later. But yeah, I've been having a lot of fun. There's a little bit different things that go on in this game. You can actually build some stuff within the world or the map that you're currently working on or going through. So you have like a mine pit where you're like building stone, and that helps you build other structures like spikes, that are shoot out, or like a little pillar that has like flamethrowers that are like kind of encircle it. So just other kind of power up kind of buildings like that you can plop down. So it's a little bit different. It's not just you shooting your magic or melee weapons or whatever you happen to have at the time. So a little bit different. So I kind of like it. I like that kind of building aspect of it. I'm still on the first level. I haven't beat actually. No, I'm sorry. I did beat the first level you start at, the kind of like the tutorial level that they give you. So I'm on to this. I'll be on to the second level here soon. I haven't actually played it for the last few days, but I'm playing some other stuff. But yeah, so like I said, very vampires like, but all in 3D, but still pretty fun. I mean, I'm enjoying it. It's something a little bit different to kind of cleanse my palate from all the shooters and stuff that I play and whatnot. But yeah, having a good time with it. And that's on the Nintendo Switch too. So I'm playing that one. I think it's on everything though, I believe. So yeah, having a good time with that. I don't know if there's any comments or questions for me.
So with the the plethora of survivor-like games out there, and I've played my fair share as well, right? Like, what made you latch on?
It was cheap. It was on sale in the eShop. Actually, both of the games were. Yeah, both of them were pretty cheap. I think around like $6.50 or so. I think there was like a 10-20 cent difference between the two, but yeah, they were pretty cheap. I was going to buy the other one too, but I was like, I saw the Demons Lake, and I was like, I mean, I like them and all, but I just didn't feel like that type of gameplay at the time. So I was like, oh, Survivor one looks pretty good, pretty cool. So yeah, I picked it up. So basically, money. That's what it came down to. But yeah, still a very enjoyable game. I've still been playing it these past couple weeks, so I've been liking it. All right, Mr. Game Logic, you've got, I think, one of the new releases from the past week or two. Dragon Quest. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Just before we go on to that, Tal. So I was desperately looking up things that would prompt me to ask you questions. So how about, since I was unable to do so, and I was unable to do so because I quite honestly haven't been ignoring this whole Survivor thing. Like, anytime that I would see a game labeled Survivor, I'd be like, yep, nope, not interested, not for me. But now of course, that was at the time when they were just starting, and I didn't know that they were going to be a thing. So now apparently they've become a thing. So much like we had to do with roguelites and roguelikes and other subgenres that have come on, can you give us like a 2 to 5 minute explainer of like what this subgenre is?
So basically, you're always, for the most part, you're kind of drop down on a map or in a world, and it's, I think, of Vampire Survivors. I don't know if it was infinite, but it seemed like it. Like, I don't know, DB, if you ever played Vampire Survivors. I don't remember if you ever did or
not. Oh yeah, I played it. I'm trying to remember if the map is, if there's borders to the map. Like, some of the other ones I've played definitely have borders to them.
Definitely
like,
smaller, for sure. I know, like, Brotato was like just a square, like a small little square that you're kind of stuck in.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like this one too. This one has a border in it, and you're basically kind of running away, but also trying to kill everything that's coming at you. And it's just a constant, just like a barrage of enemies that come at you, pretty much at all times. Like, there's maybe a lull every once in a while where, as you kind of kill off, they haven't spawned in yet, but then they just start coming again. So once again, you're just trying to survive it. You do everything you can. You have, like I said, there's melee weapons sometimes that you have. There's well, this one, there's like bows and arrows, obviously, because it's kind of back in ancient times, so they're not gonna have guns or anything like that. But you can have magic and stuff like that. So you're always just trying to, and with this one, like I said, with the buildings and stuff, you can kind of maneuver yourself to these like pillars, like I said, these different pillars that you can build with either fire or spears, or I think there's one that just kind of, it's just like a pushing motion that it kind of like force pushes the enemies back. So kind of gives you a little bit of room. Those are only 3 I've seen so far. And I think there's like a healing one that you get. But you're always just trying to, like I said, maneuver your way either away from or maybe into one of these like pillars, or depending on the game you're playing, just trying to just kill the enemies. And it's, at certain points there's, you have the normal kind of like cannon fodder enemies. They're, 1 or 2 hits, 3 hits, but then they progressively get worse, or harder to kill. So you get multiple hits, and you're trying to upgrade your magic and your weapons and all this, but then depending on the game, once again, sometimes you can combine the two, and it becomes something even more powerful. So obviously, as those harder enemies coming at you, you kind of use those more powerful magic and stuff like that to get these enemies to kill them.
Does it work the same way that Vampire Survivors or a lot of the other Survivors, where once you kill an enemy, it drops some type of orb or crystal that you have to get close to absorb?
Yeah, that's basically your XP. Yeah. So yeah, that was the other thing. Every time you level up, that's when you can upgrade. Most of the time, for most of these games, you upgrade your weapons or whatnot on the magic and stuff. So,
and most of them are auto fire. That you
yes, yeah. I haven't seen one that did you actually have to press a button.
There are some of them, a couple of them that I've played. You have the option to manual fire. Like one of the Diablo like ones that I've played last year, you had the option to click a button to swing your sword or shoot your bow, but it also will do it automatically. And it's usually, it's still, even if you're doing it manually, it still is at the same pace, because one of the upgrades that you end up getting in many of these is like the speed that your attacks fire off at. So oftentimes it starts like, it's not like a visible cooldown meter, but it is not like there's a spacing of your attack. And so it's designed in such a way that one of the level upgrades allows for more frequent attacks.
Yeah. And then also, I think this one has it too, like Vampire Survivors. Some of these kind of upgrades you can actually unlock permanently, like after you beat a level or beat a certain amount of levels or some stuff like that. So it kind of gives you an incentive to kind of keep going, so you can get these upgrades permanently, and then you keep going and get another upgrade, and you just kind of so on and so on. So it's pretty fun. I know Game Logic, sometimes you don't like to jump into stuff right away, but I don't know, I think you'd enjoy some of these type of games. Maybe I don't think you're kind of the pixel art kind of guy, as far as I remember, for the most part. But this, like I said, this one's 3D. A lot of them kind of come out, especially the newer ones. They're usually kind of fully 3D rendered. So if you're kind of looking graphically at these kind of games, but I know, like with Battle Royale, like you didn't jump in right away. Like you kind of stood back, and then eventually you kind of saw, this is a thing that's probably going to keep going. So you kind of jumped into it. And I think this is kind of one of them that's kind of like that, at least for now, as far as I can tell. But yeah.
Well, the journey is always interesting, right? Because the initial only reason why I jumped into Battle Royales was because I was spending a lot of time focused on live streaming. And so in that vein, like, there's just certain things that you kind of have to play, right? And yes, I did find fun in Fortnite solos. And unfortunately, that quickly evaporated just because there weren't enough people who continued playing, right? It just became just a bunch of bots. But yeah, so when you initially started that description, I was like, okay, this is horde mode, is essentially what this is. But as your description went on, the thing that I struck on really to me is that, oh no, this is actually a shmup without bullets. So it's like a melee shmup, essentially, which I think is what a lot of these games are.
Yeah, I mean, there's more than melee too, though. I mean, like I said, it depended on the game and like the theme of the game, like with sci-fi, or this is obviously fantasy kind of stuff. So you can have like projectile type of weapons too. But yeah, like I said, this like I said earlier, they call it reverse bullet hell. So it's instead of everybody shooting at you, you're shooting at everybody else. So and most of the enemies, for the most part, they don't shoot in a lot of these games, at least not that I've seen. Maybe like one or two. Like I think there's like a bow and arrow guy here in one of the enemies that I encountered, but I mean, his attack was so slow. It's like unless you're like just not paying attention, not paying attention, you're not gonna get hit by one of these guys. But for the most part, yeah, it's just you shooting at everything, and they're just kind of coming at you in like droves, like a horde mode. Yeah, kind of more.
Yeah, I think the shmup aspect is a reasonable comparison of, instead of moving kind of vertically up the screen, you're kind of moving within a square map, but still kind of dodging to shoot, and like you would in a shmup.
Yeah, this one is definitely more confined. There's definitely borders in this game, in Achilles Survivor.
Well, and maybe to define, so when I say shmup, I didn't mean like the vertically scrolling type, but I meant like a twin stick shmup. In which case, like you do have that flat plane, but you're moving like
twin stick shooter type of thing. Yeah.
Yep. And hello to Ramon. He just jumped in the comments. Nice to have you here. Thanks for joining us on a Monday. The other game from them was Achilles Legends Untold. So that was the other title.
So the last thing I want to ask, so are there levels or waves?
Now when you say levels, like, are you talking about
like, do you ever like finish a board and then
there's different maps that you can you can go to different maps. Yeah. Usually in most of these games that I've seen so far. And like Vampire Survivors, it was kind of some of them were just either vertical or just horizontal, but then the other ones that it was just pretty much all open. This one seems to be pretty much open as far as I've seen so far. Like I said, still a border. There's still a lot smaller than I've seen probably in a couple of other games that I've played, like Rotato, and there's another one I can't remember right now, but yeah, this seems to be not too bad.
Okay, very cool.
All right, Game Logic, you want to stay on the mic there and tell us about the new, or well, I guess not new, kind of newish Dragon Quest game?
Yeah, you'll have to hit DBQ for the history. So there was a Dragon Quest VII in like 2000.
2001, I think, is when it came to PlayStation. It was out in Japan a few years before, but yes. And then it had a 2016 or 2017 3DS remake as well.
And now this is Dragon Quest VII Reimagined, which I haven't looked back at the OG DQ7 or the remaster. I assume this is significantly different, at least in its graphical presentation.
In its graphical presentation, it's certainly, and I'll let you talk about that a little bit. It is streamlined in terms of it cuts out sections of some story. It has most of the same dialogue. It cuts out a few sections, and it accelerates the pacing quite a bit compared to the two previous versions.
Yeah, so what I'll say is, when this thing showed at the Nintendo Direct last fall, I was like, okay, it looks kind of neat. It seems a little interesting, a little intriguing. We had the conversation last week or maybe a couple episodes ago about, do we really ever stick with these things, or are we more enamored by the idea of a Dragon Quest game than actually playing through a Dragon Quest game? And so I was kind of surprised that I myself decided to jump on this. I'm about 56 and a half hours into The Legend of Heroes Trails Beyond the Horizon. And so I didn't want to wait till I was entirely finished with that game. Like, I wanted to pick something up. And of course, I picked up Grid Legends last week. But, Grid Legends is not necessarily something that I'm focused on, like, finishing, like, from beginning to end. So I was kind of interested in checking out what else was out there in the zeitgeist. And so DQ7 here is the thing that came out last week on the Switch 2 and PC and PS5, and the OG Switch as well. And so I think,
and Xbox. I think it's on everything.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't see. I looked for review scores. I didn't find any Xbox review scores, and so maybe they just hadn't hit at the time. But this thing is super interesting in a lot of different ways. I think number one, the thing that I realized, and I'm about maybe 5 hours into it now, is so the gods of fate, I guess, conspired to kind of make me play a cozy game, because in a lot of ways this is kind of a cozy game, right, with the art style. It is also kind of mostly, I would call it an auto battler, in the same way that I kind of think of Ayuden Chronicle, in terms of you can just set everything up to automate. Like, you can pick, there's one tactic out of 6 that you can pick to actually, like, manually dictate the actions of any one or multiple numbers of party members, like turn by turn. But there's not really a ton of sense in doing that. So it is pretty much an auto battler. You pick your tactics that you can assign to each party member. It is nice that you can either do that in battle, or you can do it outside of battle. There's a screen you can get into to set up everybody's tactics for whatever your next encounter is. Along the way, it's kind of the standard RPG fare. You find armories where you can go and you can buy new weapons that do more damage. And so I've been, and that's, I guess, important, because a lot of times in some RPGs and JRPGs especially, I sometimes kind of bypass the whole shopping thing. I also kind of do that in Diablo, right? Because you get enough, like, loot drops that you're constantly picking stuff up. So, like, shopping is kind of a bother. But I've actually been spending time in the armory, because there's not really major loot drops in this. You get the occasional tchotchke to equip into your accessory slot, and there are, sometimes you'll come across a new shield or something like that. But you don't get a ton of like new things, and so shopping to me kind of becomes a little more essential. The story, the story is the story, right? It sometimes feels a little weird that you're basically the best friend of this person who is set to inherit the universe. I guess in a lot of ways it's kind of like the Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 kind of storyline, right? It's like you're not the guy, you're the guy next to the guy, right? Theoretically, but in the game you wind up playing right the guy next to the guy, and so it's kind of an interesting slant to that. The character Maribel, you can see her, the girl in the video that we're showing now. She is full on Hermione Granger, and I don't know if that's how the character was originally portrayed, but as I listened to her lines, I was like, man, I feel like I've heard this persona before, and then it finally clicked a few hours into it. I was like, oh, this is Hermione, like constantly giving Harry and what's, I can't even remember the guy's name. It's been so long since I watched the movies. Ron. Constantly giving Harry and Ron guff, but it's neat. Like I said, it's very much that Eiyuden Chronicle way. I haven't gotten enough characters yet where you can change. I think you can change their order of alignment, but I haven't gotten access to enough characters where you can change like rows and put people in the front and people in the back like you can in Eiyuden Chronicle. So I'm not sure if that mechanic is there. I did not play the original game or the remake. This is my first time experiencing this game. Some of the characters seem fairly endearing as you get exposed to them. There is a not insignificant plot twist, like maybe 3 or 4 hours into the game, and those.
So you've made it off the initial island, is what you're saying?
Yes, I'm on the second island at this point. Okay.
And that's kind of the way the story lays out, is that you are going, it's not really a plot twist because it's out in the demo. It's also a 25-year-old game, right? That you think your island is the only island that exists, and you're starting to, unlike other RPGs, you don't necessarily have a giant map that you're looking out to explore the world. You are kind of discovering the world and creating a map as you go.
And that's part of the setup. So the major plot twist I'm talking about is so it appears that like each of the islands is its own like chapter, right, or story arc. And so the major plot twist I'm talking about is in that first story arc, there's a setup, and then when you get to the end of that story arc, that's like things are not what they appear to be. So that, I thought that was fairly interesting. And like I said, I think I am I can't remember if I'm in the back half of the second island or if I've moved on to the third island, but basically you go around, and as you're following through this like mythology, there's a series of colored tablets, right? They're like yellow, red, green, blue, gray, that you are collecting shards of, and each time you complete a portrait or a tablet, whatever, you gain access to another island, and then you go off to that island and you have an encapsulated adventure, and then you return home. And here's like the tablet room or whatever, and so there's like 3 of each color type. So the game is supposed to be about 40 to 42 hours. So I'm looking forward to playing each of these. What I do like about this is, and this is in contrast to Trails, right, is like at least these adventures are very encapsulated. Like they're not like hyper threaded into like everything in the universe. You play them and there are these little stories, which means to me, if this does wind up being a game that I like put down and come back to, like that particular story arc like will be a thing in and of itself, and I won't necessarily have to like keep track of the 1,000 other things that have gone on or are going on in parallel. So Graphically, it's been fairly interesting. I was about to kick into a spiel about performance, but I was like, oh, that's right, I'm playing this on Switch 2. Never mind. But I've played this so far in 4K. I've also, because I was doing game capture, I've also been playing it in 1080p, but I haven't like done anything fancy like a performance mode or anything like that. So it is one of those games that kind of in a cell shaded approach. I feel like it's gonna like maintain, its graphical presence or whatever into the future. It should age pretty well. One thing that I don't like about performance is when the camera is backed way off to where you are observing like a large land area and you're transiting it, you can see like the smoothing of like the graphical passes, and you can see the pop in right as you like pass by a given area, and then it's pops up to like more detail. It's kind of like a moving bubble like that moves along with you, and you can kind of see that happening. But one thing I will say from an artistic perspective, in a way in which this game kind of punches above its belt, is the art's really great. You can see like some of the art like on the water surfaces and stuff in the background. But in particular, they do a really good job with the bokeh effect, and that makes the game feel like it has a little more graphical fidelity than it actually does. And so this is me accessing the tactics rate selections outside of combat. So I found that was pretty, because I know there are some games that I've approached that like you can't get into like a menu like this until you're actually like in a fight. And then, it's okay, geez, like I wish I had, could manage this like, off sequence. But the camera bokeh effect does a lot to kind of raise the floor of your perception of the graphical fidelity. So I do like that as well. I don't know. Any questions?
There's no kind of like, because I see you're in the kind of the options here now, but is there any kind of performance mode or anything like that, or any kind of video settings?
Everything. So what I've found on the Switch 2, and you guys can let me know if you know differently. And of course, we've all been experimenting with this hardware, right, since it's come out, and trying to learn things weird, because we all also had a lengthy conversation about how Nintendo didn't tell you everything about how things were going to work on this. What I have found is, much like Xbox, everything is really dependent upon the parent level, the system level menu. And so you put it, if you want 4K 60, 4K 120, you're going to do that at the system level. And then the game's going to respond based on, how it's been set. Like I have 4K 120 enabled, but of course, 90% of the games that I'm playing, I'm getting 4K 60, right? So I haven't seen anything in game that really lets you do anything to change that.
And on the overworld, I noticed earlier when you're kind of by that castle, you're able to like destroy like barrels or boxes or whatever. Is there any other kind of interaction any kind of fighting you can do when you're in that overworld? It's always turn based.
It is mostly turn based. It has this. So as you level up and get more powerful and render more damage, there become points where you will leapfrog a certain enemy type, and that enemy you'll just be able to like come by and whack like in the real time mode, and they'll just go poof. Like the game's not going to put you through battling them if it like you're just clearly overpowered, right? So the initial ones are like these little blobs, and so initially you have to fight them, but shortly thereafter it's kind of like, look, if you roll up on them and you have the initiative and you just hit them, hit the A button in the overworld, then they're just going to give it to you, and that includes even when you're like dungeon crawling, right? They're not going to put you through having a fight with them, and then that happens, and then it starts with blobs. But like I said, as you level up and as you get more powerful, you will see enemies that initially like gave you some guff, but then I don't know, pick an hour later, right? You're just kind of able to whack them in the dungeon with the A button.
I'm chuckling because the blobs are the blue slimes, right? They are the kind of iconic Toriyama enemy for this game series. But that is exactly how it works in terms of, which is another added feature with this edition, is that you do have that kind of overworld aspect of hitting them once, and you do get some reduced XP in those, but then you're not actually going into a battle sequence, which is always just turn-based. So
Yeah, it's kind of a neat alternative too. I'll also say, you guys have probably heard me frequently grouse and complain whenever I don't have control, right, over how a character levels up, what skills they pick. Like I typically tend to not like the computer doing that for you, but the computer does it for you here. So like as you level up, you will just gain like a new spell, and you won't even know that you have it really, unless you go rooting around in that menu, right, to look. But the effect winds up being you wind up going into a battle and you're like, oh crap, I haven't seen this enemy before, or this dude looks powerful. And then like a character will pull something off that, and the animations on this they're not Trails level, they're not Expedition 33 level, but they are kind of neat. So there's a new spell that my hero has gained called Coral Grief. And like he casts this spell, and these, I don't know, sea anemones or whatever, or sea corals or whatever, rise out of the ground. It's an AoE spell, so it hits like 3 enemies at one time, and then like does tons of damage. Maribel, she started off with a spell called Frizz, which was basically like a fireball, right? Then all of a sudden she started doing this spell called Sizz, which is like Coral Grief. It like raises flames out of the floor, hits 3 enemies, and does like massive amounts of damage. So some of those things are new, and then and even melee, I'm seeing new attacks. Like my hero does this thing called, like, I think like the Aqua Slash or something now. The Prince does this thing called like a Lightning Slash or something like that. He also does like gain this ability where he rolls in on them and kind of flies into like a fury and does like this multiple hit attack that hits like 3 of the enemies. So there's some fairly neat things that happen. So you're not just all the time like, here's that's him, his Lightning Slash. So you're not restricted to just seeing like the one animation of them like leaping forward, right, and doing the one hit with the sword. So it's been pretty neat so far.
Nice. DB, any other comments? Did you pick this up? Because I think
I played the demo a couple weeks back and talked about it on here when I played through the demo, which took you through like the opening island and onto the first or the second island, is in terms of where that kind of demo closes. And the demo caps at about, you can level up to, well, I think level 10 for your character, and there's a cap on the job system as well, that you gain points that level up your job, and then as you progress through the game, it opens up additional jobs as well, and some of those skills carry over between job to job that you can learn, which is another one of the changes, that as you switch jobs in like the older one, some of those skills didn't carry over with you, and so there's certain things that you can equip within those jobs that will, even if you switch a job, that you'll maintain that as well. And so there's some depth in the character system as you go through it as well.
Yeah, so it's a neat flip from Trails, just in like you've been able to see it like in this video. It's like where Trails, I can have a block, I can have a night where I've decided like, hey, I'm going to put in extra time, I'm going to try and advance the story, and I can have a 4-hour session that is nothing but dialogue, right, and character interactions, and like very little, sometimes zero fighting. Whereas this, it's like you're constantly in battle, you're constantly leveling up, you're constantly getting new attack types, you're constantly like finding a new armory and like being able to level up your weapons and things like that. I have not, so far, I could be wrong, but I haven't been exposed to any type of like crafting or anything yet. So it seems like so far there won't be that, cognitive overhead and like extra subsystem of systems to manage. So things are fairly clean and straightforward. And that is I'm loving Trails, but Trails is like 9 levels deep of like stuff that you're constantly sorting through and managing progression of different characters. And so this has been kind of a welcome palate cleanser.
Nice. And before you get to Trails, because that's your next game here, Switch 2, just because that was like your rotation was on Switch 2, or
No, I mean, I looked at the reviews that were out there at the time, and it seemed like Switch was the better place to play it than PC. So I didn't dig into a lot of the details on that, and that just may have been like review bias or whatever. But but I am very firmly interested in keeping a diversified portfolio of games. So being that I'm playing Trails on PC, picking this up on Switch 2 made sense.
nice. All right, let's jump into some more Trails talk here. Legend of Heroes.
Yeah, I won't jump into too much. Like I said, I am about 56 hours in now. I am on Van's story arc in chapter 2, which makes me think I'm on the back end of chapter 2. I think I've maybe got 70 hours total that I'll need to go to wrap the game up based on the way I've been playing it. I'm continuing to have fun in it, and here in kind of late mid game, I'm starting to participate in a lot of the subsystems that I haven't wanted to be bothered with. So I haven't really spent a ton of time in the connection subsystem, but I'm spending more time in that now. I spent a little time in it, and the connections there are these tinier kind of sub-story arcs that are not action-oriented. They're just a bunch of, in-engine cutscenes where you are extending your relationship with other characters. And the end result of that is you get buffs, bonuses to simultaneous attacks, right? And team-up attacks that happen in battle. And so I think there's like 3 different levels of teamwork attacks. There's they all have different acronyms, and I can't remember, but I think of them as there's one that's like a 4-letter acronym with S, like SCLM or something like that, and I think of that as like simultaneous. And then there's an EX, and that is an additional level up, I would call it, of kind of teamwork attack that pops off right when you score a certain amount of damage. And then I think there's a third type, or maybe the third type's actually lower. So there's the basic super generic type that I think I talked about last week or a week ago, where if you're just like, you can see it on the battlefield, like if you pop within like the bubble of influence of like another character, they will do another attack. When after you do a normal attack. And then there's this SCLM thing, which is like another like animation that pops off of like multiple characters pulling attacks. And then there's this EX thing, which is almost like you're doing a normal attack, but the resulting animation is like it's almost like a craft, right? And all these things deal like increasing levels of damage. So I'm spending some time in doing that. I have had like I said, the one night of, man, I really want to push the story, and it's 4 hours of just going around being a detective and solving cases and blah blah blah. Now I will say the other night, I was like, I can't remember. There's something I had just finished, but maybe this was actually the night of the Super Bowl, I think. And I got down here after the Super Bowl, and I was like, man, I want to put in like an hour on Trails, and I put in an hour. And in that hour, like I ran around, I solved like 3 cases. I got like a bunch of bonuses. And then I got up to like the launching point for like my next kind of battle oriented part. So I was like, okay, that pacing feels good, right? I don't mind an hour of kind of story based administrivia that set me up for like, and then I know when I'm coming back, I'm going into like a big fight. So, it's a thing. It's an acquired taste that, depending on like the type of person you are, that's going to drive whether or not you feel like sitting through that or not. The complimentary thing I will say about the games, at least the game, is that it's epic, right? It is kind of, I won't quite say Game of Thrones level, but that's kind of the analog, right? It's this spider web of relationships and organizations and people that you keep constantly running. Some of it kind of gets tropish, right? It's like 56 hours into it, it's like they keep dropping names of like this person, and you're like every person you meet, it's like, oh yeah, we we did this case together, or I just saw you 2 weeks ago, or I saw you last April. And there you get kind of like a little comic book panel, right, of like, whatever was going on at the time. So there's things like that. There is, I won't necessarily call it a negative, but like this whole thing is supposed to be built around like this country making this effort to go to space. And that's the initial thread. And great Scott, it seems like you have gone like a 360-degree arc, right, around that story. It's like they keep coming back to it, they keep mentioning it. And I'm like, dude, I have seen nothing of this space race that's going on to build this rocket. So it just seems so inconsequential to a certain extent. Like there's little tidbits of like things and like, that get back to that, but I'm like, it's not like the central meat of the story. So there's tons of stuff that happen in like weird arcs and like you're putting things together, and there's a bit of a kind of a Scooby-Doo mystery to it of like how all these things are connected. So it's very I don't know. I'm sure we've all watched television shows where like 99 different things happen in a course of a 22 episode season, and somehow like you find out that like all these things are interconnected. So it's kind of a bit like that. But in general, like I'm as the characters level up and they get more and more powers and they get more and more animations, I've hit the point where I definitely have my characters who have like my favorite like combat animations, particularly when you hit like the S break level powers and things like that. So and it's a cast of like 24 characters that you're given access to over time. So it's hard, but over time, like you start figuring out like, okay, this is my favorite, and like this guy is so powerful. Like you get access to Kevin, who is this basically he's kind of like a warrior priest type of character, and he's also clearly like the most powerful, so it's always great when I and I don't, much like I approach Forza, where I don't just drive like the best cars, right? I don't necessarily have like the most powerful people on the battlefield all the time. I try and play some of the other characters. But when he comes on the battlefield, I'm like, okay, yeah, now it's time to go. This boss has been kicking my butt, but now we're about to, get things back to normal. So, but yeah, I'm having a good time with it. Like I said about Dragon Quest VII, the art style, it's not a graphical powerhouse, but the art style, right, lends a lot to the game coming off as really, really beautiful.
Yeah, it has that. It's like an anime-ish, like cell shaded, right? Graphics.
It's not quite cell shaded, but it is very anime. And I've been playing around with performance. What I will say is like you across an array of cards, you should be able to find like whether between using DLSS 3, 4, or 4.5 and picking high or ultra, you should be able to find like a performance envelope that you're comfortable with. Initially, I felt like the game was not super or at least wouldn't let you hit kind of ultra performance levels that I'm used to playing at, like your 144, your 165 frames per second. But you can find things like that if you play around like with the settings enough, and you're not losing that much by going from like ultra to high. So if you want those increased frames.
Nice. DB, anything for Game Logic?
No, it's fun that you're sticking with it and still enjoying it after these weeks. So
nice. All right, DB, you want to stay on the mic for your PC game?
Sure, just a quick one here. Yeah, like I said last week, I tried to find some PC games. This is one that I had seen and was kind of keeping an eye on. It's a rhythm game. So here's the elevator pitch for it: it's a rhythm game that is Pokemon with dancing mechs. It is so it is the general setup is you are a teenage person, and the kind of general culture that the world is, the entertainment is all a bunch of dancing robots that are controlled by humans. And so you, in very much a Pokemon-like style, you start off in a small town and you meet a professor who needs you to deliver a package, and your robot that you got for your birthday is kind of broken, and you need to find parts for it. And the professor lets you choose 3 of his robots. Stop me if you've heard this one before, right? To go out and deliver the package so that you can get the parts that you need. And in a Pokemon style, you are running from, the overworld animations are, they are straight out of a computer animated cartoon from 2001. If that gives you kind of the, these are not pushing polygons in any type of way. They're kind of a little blocky. They're a little, clunky in their movement. So this is the Steam page up here. You're seeing some of the dancing robots, and so once you, and just like Pokemon, as you're running through, if you come into line of sight of another human, they challenge you to a dance off, to a dance battle. And so then, the battle is, instead of having a health bar that you're decreasing, you have an acclaim bar that you are increasing. So the better you dance, the more your acclaim grows. And so you've got a note track, like it's not a rhythm, it's not a note highway like in Guitar Hero. It weaves around almost like theatrhythm like, but you don't have to control the ups and downs of the rhythm. It just kind of, it moves along, and you have circles that you have to hit on the button press. And so the closer you hit on those circles, you get like a okay, good, and perfect, right? Or if you miss completely. And you have, depending on the robot you have, your basic robot starts off with 1 button press, and the more complex ones, you'll get 4 different button presses that have. So the robot that I started with had 1 button press, and then when you go into solo mode, like, the lights dim down and the spotlight comes on you, and then you get another button press in there. Or my second button press, I can only use once every 8 beats or once every 12 beats, depending on the different types of things. But that by using it, I'll build acclaim faster. And so I want to be using it on a regular basis to increase my acclaim, increase my life bar, or decrease, get closer to winning the battle. And then sometimes you have other attacks or other buttons that you can mix and match, and they have either a cooldown or a number of beats that they have to hit before you can use them again. You can get an attack basically that builds up a charge, and if you use it on the beat, it will take down some of your opponent's acclaim. So bring them, drop their ability to get closer to winning. And the rhythm is really good. I mean, it's not unlicensed music, but it's all kind of indie techno music. So I've been playing it mainly on Steam Deck, and it runs pretty well on Steam Deck. I think it's playable, not verified on Steam Deck, but it is, it plays good on a controller on PC as well. And it's, I've lost time to it because each song can be 3 to 4 minutes, and it's easy to just want to move from one song to the other, because the rhythm game, like a good rhythm game, you get into kind of a flow, and you get you just kind of you find that state where you're in the music and you're feeling the rhythm, and you're just kind of able to keep going. And I think one of the things that makes it unique or makes it enjoyable, gives some depth to it, is these different button presses that allow you to kind of add a little layer of strategy to how you're playing your rhythms. And they're, depending on, it looks like as I'm getting, opening chests, I'm getting parts for other robots that I don't have yet. Like, you can equip basically perks on some of your robots, and there are 5 different robot types. You have a soloist, you have a backup dancer, you can have different types of dancers that way, different types of robots. And they also, the type of robot Also, their special attacks differ as well, and so that's a fought somebody who had a special attack of basically locking down some of my buttons, so I couldn't use them. So I could only use certain buttons. It also, because it's on PC at this point, it also allows for custom songs that you can upload your MP3s, and it'll chart a note highway for it, and you can play your own music as well. So you can load in MP3s and play it that way. It's a solo developer, mainly a solo developer. It's Slow Glass Games, I believe, is Sloth Gloss Games. There we go. Sloth Gloss Games out of California. He started the company in 2021. He's worked on things like Torchlight 3 and a couple other games. It is, you can tell the scope of it. It's about 10 hours only from reading the reviews. But if you enjoy rhythm games, I picked it up for like $18 on Steam. It's a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it. And that's Steel Century Groove.
I had a question and now I forgot. Game Launcher, go ahead if you were going to say something. I lost my train of thought.
I didn't have a question on that game. I did want to bring Ramon's comment up because he was also plugging in an indie. I just finished a cool indie called On Guard. 5 hours, fun combat as well as using your environment. Nice humor. So
yeah, and On Guard came out on Steam in 2023. So
nice. Actually, I didn't have a question. I had a comment though. I was watching a video while you were talking at the beginning, and it showed the overworld with like the kind of looks like slightly better Roblox graphics.
Yes, I could see that. Like it's not quite as blocky, but
a little more high resolution maybe.
And I think one of the things, like, you spend time in the overworld, but you can, and I completely get this, as a scoped project, the animation in the robot dances, as you saw in some of those videos, is really fluid. And like the time and the development effort was definitely spent in the dance-offs more than it was in the overworld. But by like my third battle, I had just like playing Pokemon. Like Pokemon's never pushing graphical pieces. You're not running around that world because of the graphical fidelity of running through tall grass to catch something. It's part of, you accept that that's part of the graphic fidelity. And a couple battles in, I was definitely feeling the same way of like, yeah, I'm just moving around. I'm really just kind of trying to move quickly to get to my next battle because that's where the fun is.
Nice. All right, DB, stay on the mic as we jump into the main news headlines for our next segment 2, as you have the first couple of headlines here.
Yeah, and speaking of graphical fidelity, let's talk about Guerrilla's game announcement. Last week, Guerrilla announced, this has been rumored that they've been working on some type of multiplayer game. So Guerrilla, the Horizon developers, announced Horizon Hunter's Gathering. So this is a co-op action game, 3-person action, going out and battling some of the robotic beasts from the Horizon universe. This is the art style is a little more cartoony, kind of, people have talked about it, kind of the Fortnite-ification, or it feels kind of like the Star Wars Clone Wars, kind of very stylized in terms of its animation style.
It kind of reminds me almost of a Rare game, like a Sea of Thieves,
like
something like that, or
Sea of Thieves. It has a similar, not quite as blocky, I think, as some of those, but definitely it is intentionally stylized, and I think in part it is because you're not trying to. You want it to run really smooth in a multiplayer game, and in a multiplayer game, you want a lot of people to be able to run it, and so it doesn't have to push kind of realism fidelity like Horizon Forbidden West did. You're there for the gameplay experience more so than you are for the exploration. You're instancing in and battling, main beast along with some other beasts that are in that same instance is what it looks like. It has your characters. I think there's 5 or 6 different characters that all have some like pre-designed classes. And then within that, as you do a run or as you do a battle, you can, as you level up, you can kind of spec in one direction or another. So there's kind of feels like 2 branches of each character class that, depending on how you're playing and who you're playing with, you may, specking more damage or support or flame or lightning or different types of how you're going to play out how your character is designed in place. So that's all by just looking at what it looks like in terms of the limited gameplay they showed us. There's going to be a beta, an early access beta, launching, I think, at the end of this month. It is, to me, it feels very much like, it looks very much like Dauntless, which was kind of a smaller scale Monster Hunter, where you and 2 to 3 other people were, instancing in, taking down a beast and coming back to a main hub to craft and use the parts for different things. And I love that. I really enjoyed that game. It shut down last year, a year or 2. It was the company was owned by Epic. They were bought by Epic over the course of their time. But yeah, this feels like a neat expansion. I know it's gotten kind of mixed reception in terms of what it is, but I think the 3v 3v1, the PvE aspect of the combat is attractive to me in terms of jumping in. It's something you could play solo, or it's something obviously playing with a squad is going to give you the ability to kind of synchronize some of your character loadouts a little bit more. It was a surprise that it launched without a whole lot of fanfare, especially since Sony announced today that they're going to, as we'll talk about, they're going to do a state of play in another week. The fact that it came out or didn't come out, but was announced outside of a state of play and just in kind of a vid doc, what is kind of surprising. But it also seems to be one of the few live service games that still exists at Sony after kind of the shutdown of many others. So maybe it was very much a let's get this out the door and get people talking about it, and we can always show more as it goes.
Well, I wonder if that means we're going to see gameplay at the state of play later this week. So maybe this was done to kind of get some of like the initial, like, out of the way and give people their time to like grouse about it or be aware of it. And then if you show gameplay during state of play, like people kind of already know the boilerplate stuff. So I don't know. Maybe that'll be.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, given kind of the mixed reaction, it gives a chance for people to get their first reactions out there, and then hopefully be open to learning more about it. So.
Yeah, it looks like they just kind of show quick snippets of gameplay during that initial video. It looks like at the end of February, that's what they're going to have a closed playtest, which you can sign up for now. So you want to jump in. All right, you want to jump in if there's nothing else to
take the next news story. Yeah, so last week we had, I think it was a Nate in the chat, and if I'm wrong, I apologize, but one of the community members.
Yeah, that was Warawana.
Warawana. Okay, thank you for the correction. Yeah, Warawana brought up Ashes of Creation. And so this is a messy rabbit hole to jump down. I'll give a little bit of credit to YouTuber SkillUp to give me a quick primer in this in terms of getting an understanding of what all the pieces are and then starting to peel back some of the news stories. So a couple different news stories, MMORPG.com, PC Gamer or PCN, and then Game Informer and Rock Paper Shotgun. This was a game that was kickstarted back in 2017. And then it launched, as Warwana said, in early access in December. It's a game that, as it was being funded, I think it got funded for about 3 million, 3.2 million, I think is maybe what I saw as I was reading through. The original creative director and the Intrepid is the studio. The Intrepid's co-founder, Stephen Sharif, had made statements over time of that if the game never releases, that he'll provide full refunds to people who have backed it, even coming out of his own pocket. And a couple weeks ago, so early December, it launches on early access, kind of mixed reviews from the community, comments of it not feeling fully baked. And then in late January, you had an announcement from Sharif saying that he has parted ways with Intrepid, that he was resigning in protest over decisions that the board of directors was making. And, and then you had another announcement kind of that he resurfaced, as this article says, to urge patience over fans' disgruntlement. And then by the end of January, you had some of the other, I think the article that I found useful on this piece was out of Rock, Paper, Shotgun, that the former communications director, Margaret Crone, kind of gave a timeline where she found out on January 28th that Intrepid was going to lay off about 100 people. Quote here, this is a Rock, Paper, Shotgun from Edwin Evans Thurlwell. There we go. A quote here from the communications director. I was told her team that changes were coming, didn't know who would be affected, and wanted them to know. This was the 28th of January that she learned of 100 people that would be laid off. Then on the 30th, she got confirmation of who would be affected and spoke with her team. And then the next day, January 31st, the all staff. So she posted that we were all informed that via confusing email that we would be laid off. So within a span of 4 days, it goes from significant layoffs to the entire company. And there's questions about not receiving final paychecks and challenges under the WARN Act in terms of the worker adjustment retraining notification, that 60-day notices need to be, and pay needs to be outlined in terms of a studio, a mass closure, a mass layoff, or a plant closing, and that 60 days is was not given because they were all given just that day. So, and then that is the studio side of this, and then the game side of it is basically that it after 8-9 years of development is stuck in early access and is not continuing on for people that kickstarted it, paid for it, put money into the stores, things like that. So that's what I could dig around and find out about it. It seems like just a mess. Like the fact that, how much of this we don't really have an answer in terms of what the original co-studio head, co-founder, Sharif had. Thank you. Sorry about that. In terms of what the disagreements were. It's also not clear, reading some of the stories, who else is on the board of directors that he cites in his reason for stepping away. Again, given that since he was a co-founder. And so, yeah, really kind of a mess in terms of both on the community support and game release and development side, and also on the studio side in terms of building up a studio working on a game, and we've seen plenty of layoffs across the industry, so that's not unfortunately that's not super surprising. But to the way that this seems handled or communicated in terms of the timeline of going from 100 layoffs to an entire company shut down in the span of 4 days feels pretty sudden. I could see if the company is taking on water so much, and their burn rate and their debt is so high, and the early access wasn't bringing in anything. I could see where it puts a company in a really tough spot. So, and for fans, as Warawana talked about, as fans who were following this, you're kind of left with this potential of what a game could have been before it actually becomes anything. Game Logic, did you find anything more? I mean, does that match what you found on it, or?
I didn't really pull the thread on it.
Okay.
I mean, I mean, and I appreciate what Warawana's thing. And I think Warawana's thing was, I wish I could remember his question from the live chat last week, but I think his question was like, what was our feeling of like Kickstarter things, like maybe it was like not honoring, like, I apologize, War. I meant to look it up before the show, but I didn't.
I think that was part of that theme of like, what is this, as a sudden studio closure, and all the promises and buildup of it, like what does that mean for player support, fan support of Kickstarter measures? And I think this feels like it's not necessarily, it doesn't feel like a relatively big one, because it doesn't have like big names attached to it that I could see. It feels like relatively significant for people who are following in that space. But I can remember, early 2010s where this was always the concern around Kickstarter, of you don't know if something is actually going to come out or not. And how much of backing a game that, and I think that this is one of the things that Kickstarter has done over the 15 years of kind of, what was it? It was a Double Fine game that was one of the early kind of big supporters, or not big supporters, but pulled in a lot of money, was a.
I thought it was maybe
Go ahead.
the Obsidian game. Like, that's how they funded Pillars of Eternity, when
Yeah.
they had a major game get canceled by Xbox, and basically the only thing that kept them afloat was getting it, pulling off a Kickstarter.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's the challenge of knowing if the Kickstarter is there just to show fan engagement and provide some additional investment, or if it is the only way to get that game moving forward. I think one of the other challenges here is that Sharif had said publicly in tweets and other places that this game was basically fully funded, and that the Kickstarter money was there to provide some stopgap and some additional coverage, which may have been the case prior to investment funding drying up after COVID. Like, it certainly could be a product of that as well, that it seemed to be going along just fine until the investment capital money dried up, which is done for so many other studios, both big and small.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably an answer people aren't going to like, and I'm sure there's lots of names I could be called for saying it. Like I'm not a consumer protectionist in terms of like protecting consumers against all ill will. Like, the capitalist market on the barter exchange system, like it's part and parcel, like, corporate versus consumer. And in that type of relationship, obviously the corporation has advantage because it has more, it generally has more information, right, than the consumer. But in these types of relationships, it's a little less leaning towards the notion of the entity of the corporation, because they're much more so, they're not an incorporated entity. It's usually like an individual. So the thing I've always found weird about Kickstarter is I've never done one. And look, as much of a capitalist and consumerist as I am, there are things I do, like, so new devices become available, right? As much as you guys give me flack about buying new hardware, the fact of the matter is that in general, it is super, super, super rare that I pre-order hardware, because I'm just not of the mind to give somebody $1,000 and let them hold it for a device that they claim that they're shipping in 3 weeks. That's not like in line with like how, like normally, like, something becomes available, like when something is shipping, then I don't mind giving somebody money. Like, and generally I want it within 24 to 48 hours, you know? Now, if you're a company like Apple and you ship stuff all the time, then okay, yes, right? But so the notion, it's kind of insane to me, this notion that people will give $1,000 or more to a Kickstarter in the hopes and beliefs that a thing is going to ship. And, like, quite frankly, like, I'm of the mind that, like, if you're going to do that, you really need to be explicitly clear on what the terms and conditions are of a Kickstarter. And the fact of the matter is as far as I understand it, when you pledge, you're not buying a thing, and you're definitely not buying like stock in the company, right? I think that's a misperception that some people have had.
No,
like,
right.
You're not becoming like a part owner.
No, it's just that you are there. And Kickstarter, to their credit, has been more and more explicit about this. Like, this is not a purchase. And it's not even an investment where there's a guarantee return. Yeah.
Yeah, so I see Tao, and I was looking it up in the chat last week too. And I'll read a little preamble, I think. So he says, I have a question for you both. A game that I have followed for many years and was crowdfunded for 9 years, released on Steam a couple of months ago into early access, and just yesterday the studio shut down. And just yesterday the studio is being completely shut down as a project. With this, what are your personal thoughts on Kickstarters and MMOs being openly developed like this game, Ashes of Creation was? And so my simple answer is, like, look, I don't even pre-order games, right? Unless it's like something like Forza that's been in production for like 20 something years, right? Then I'll, so in general, my feeling on projects like this, super simple answer, like just off the top before I pass it over to you, GBQ, is like, don't do it. Like, if it's Obsidian and you've been playing their games for like a decade or more, at the time when they did Pillars of Eternity, that's different. I don't know who the Sharif guy is or what the studio was. Like, so don't do it. Like, it's the way of the world with the gig economy. And I get that people are passionate about games, but quite frankly, I find some of the consumer behaviors outside of like the veil of the normal framework and structure, like, weird. Like, they're just not things that I would do personally. And I get being passionate, and I laud it, and I applaud you for it. And I'm glad there are people who are doing it. My personal feeling is like you're subsidizing it for people who are more risk averse. And that's just me personally. I don't know, DBQ, what are your thoughts?
No, I think that's exactly what it is. Like, I've purchased many games this past year. I think about some of the indie RPGs that I've picked up. Like, on this podcast, I talked about like Scarlet Legacy, which was a Kickstarter game. Like, I didn't back it on Kickstarter, but I was glad to support it once it released. Like, and in part is exactly what you said of, I may be more risk averse to backing something that may or may not come to fruition, but I'm glad to support it once it does. The only things I've ever backed on Kickstarter have been physical objects, things like a book that has a more, to me, feels like it has a higher likelihood of coming to fruition versus a game, given even 10 years ago on Kickstarter, you know, the way the industry was, it still wasn't a guarantee that something was going to come to fruition. Um, I've earlier this last month, I talked about Big Hops, which was a Kickstarter game as well. You know, so there's lots of great things that I've enjoyed that have come out of the Kickstarter space, but to me, there's never been any guarantee that it's going to come, it's even going to come out, let alone come out in a state that you're going to feel satisfied with. Like you are a patron of the arts at that point, that you are providing money to people that you think will do something that you enjoy, and the finished product may or may not be something that you enjoy, as many, you know, Enlightenment era patron of the arts discovered.
And Ramon says in the chat, yep, I've only ever Kickstarted a book. It never enters my mind to Kickstarter a game or hardware. So one thing I would say is like, so I wanted to get like that kind of out, right? Like our normal approach to consumerism and a capitalist market and all that kind of stuff. That being said, I am not telling you to not follow your passion. Like if you passionately believe in an idea, and sometimes like I see hardware come by my windshield and I'm like, oh, that's a really neat idea. Like these people who were like, we're going to put like a physical keyboard on like a portable device that attaches to your iPhone. And I feel like the death of physical keyboards is a horrific, you know, schism, right, on the face of consumer electronics. Should have never happened. And I'm like, you know, I'd really like to contribute to that. But kind of like DBQ says, like, I feel like at that point you say like, I'm going to contribute, and if it comes to fruition, great. If I get the thing, great. If I don't, that's just the gamble I'm taking. And again, I'm gonna step into an analogy. Like, don't take it the wrong. People shouldn't take it the wrong way. We spent several months in my church in like adult Bible study and stuff, really like decomposing and breaking down and thinking deeply, and you know, reading a lot of teachings about the notion of charity and how you like and like coming to an understanding that like you can provide financial assistance, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can solve people's problems, and you can't just throw money at a thing. Sometimes you have to be more involved. Sometimes that means not giving as much financial backing, right? But more so going about things to give people the ability to stand on their own. And so to me, this is kind of like, so like I said, I don't think that's a universal approach or philosophy to charity, but it's part of the setup. My point is that like if you put $20 or $100 in your wallet, cash, right, to give to the needy who maybe are out begging, right, at a street corner on your commute to work. When I make that choice, I don't have anything like attached to it. Like I know that person may take that money and use it irresponsibly, right? But I'm not maintaining an attachment to the investment beyond that point, right? I'm just doing a Christian thing, and sometimes that's the best you can do amongst like all the other stuff that you're trying to do. And you know, maybe you try and do more, maybe you can't, whatever, right? But my point is that that's kind of my thought of like these Kickstarter things is like, look, you know, invest the amount that you are comfortable with the understanding that like there may become a point, not due to your own choice, that you may not have any attachment to the furtherance of that investment, right? Because things get taken out of your hand. And again, by the same token, like we have formally instituted like games that go up for pre-order that then get canceled, right? Like for corporations, for like big publishers, right? We have Telltale imploded, and they were a formally constituted going concern. You know, so to me, like understanding the risk spectrum is like people who are set up theoretically in ways that should never fail, should never topple over. So it's just a thing that I think you have to take into context and then make your choice, right? You know, and like DBQ said, patron of the arts. The unfortunate reality is, for some people, that's the only way that they will get a game funded. So I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying consider all 360 degrees, right, of the dynamic and make make your choices and your decisions thereby.
Nice. Looks like yeah, he's bringing up some more comments by Ramon. Yeah, I mean, I think you guys have pretty much said everything that I would have said. I've never funded a Kickstarter and at all, like on anything. I might, 'cause, like I know, like kind of in the beginning of Kickstarter, it's probably the same way now. I haven't really looked at it lately. They'd have like certain tiers. You're like, hey, we're going to reach this goal. We're going to have it on PC. If we reach this much, we might put it on consoles or whatnot, or mobile or whatever. So maybe if like they hit that first goal, at least I might at least try to give them some more money to try to get on consoles, or just to fund some more stuff. But I was never, I just never even thought of it. I was just like, I'll just wait till the game comes out. But also, I do buy a lot of early access games, which almost it's similar, like not in the same vein, but a lot of times those games might not actually release ever, like 100%. It might be in early access or game preview, depending on your system, for eternity. So, I mean, I guess it's kind of a crapshoot. Just unfortunately, like it shouldn't be. We've come back. We've come from the time of game releases to game releases. That's it. Like there's no DLC. There's nothing like that. Maybe there's an expansion later on or something like that. But I don't know. I guess it's just kind of a different time to put my old man hat on.
Well, I
put
think
my fist in the clouds.
an early access it's a similar vote of confidence, right? You're getting in early to support something that you want to see develop further, but it's also far enough along in its development that there's something to latch onto and play, even if it's not the full game. Like maybe it's only partial levels, or the first, not all the character classes are there, or the world maps, but
yeah,
you're getting something in exchange for your purchase, because it is at that point it's a purchase. It's not it's not financial support. It has the impact of financial support, but you are exchanging some good for what you're for your currency.
Yeah, and Thrifty message in the chat. Yeah, but early access for close to a year longer is crazy, and I understand that perspective. Just as a point of reference, I'll say Baldur's Gate 3 was in early access for more than a year. And it's gone on to be arguably one of the greatest video games that's ever been made. I mean, you would have to include them in like the top 10. I will also say thank you for admitting that you purchased early access, Tal, because I do have to walk back my whole I've never backed a Kickstarter, because I did contribute money to Star Citizen, so which is arguably like
that's a whole different story. Let's not go there right now.
Throwing stones at glass houses over here. Hold on a minute.
Yeah, but I mean that's what I think of. Like for all that I said, like I said, I'm going back to like I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying contribute because of your passion. On a spectrum of decision making in consumerism, part of what you contribute to for artistic endeavors is driven by passion, and part of it is driven by capitalist barter exchange philosophy, right? If you're going to contribute to a Kickstarter, my personal feeling is you need to be in it for 51% passion, right? With not necessarily a concrete concept of return on investment. Whereas like that consumer on the barter exchange system, that's hey, I'm giving, you give me cookie, I give you cookie, you give me cookie, right? Like I'm giving you something I expect in a commensurate thing in return. But Kickstarter is 51%, like DBQ said, patron of the arts, and like you the reality is it has the potential to blow up in your face.
Yeah, I think it all it comes down to personal preference, obviously, because it's we all have those things. Like it's like, oh, I'm never going to do this, or I'm never going to buy that, except there's one thing, so it's always that one thing. But yeah, we can probably talk about this for a while, but we're kind of running late. So let's move on real quick to the next story. Hold on a second, I gotta get this going on There was a Nintendo Direct this past week. I think it was last Thursday. I think as usual, we'll just kind of pick, kind of the things we kind of saw. I won't go through the whole list. Just kind of interested us. There's really, a lot of things, a lot of different games too that they showed. But there's only really two things that jumped out at me. It was Turok Origins. I was a big Turok fan back in the day, 64 days and stuff like that. So that looks pretty cool. And then during their little sizzle reel, they had, I believe it was Scott Pilgrim EX, which I never played the original one. So Scott Pilgrim EX was supposed to come out on March 3rd. And then Turok Origins, I don't remember. I don't think they had a date for that one.
It's a 2026.
Okay, yeah, just sometime. I think most of them were this. I don't think there was anything for next year, was there, that I saw? Or
I think everything that, I think everything
that they showed was this year.
This year.
Yeah. So those are kind of my top picks. Maybe the Ninja Gaiden 2, The Dark Side of Chaos 2, that looked pretty cool. Although I haven't played the other one. So, but anything that jumped out at you guys during this direct?
Hold on, I want to back up a little bit. Ninja Gaiden 2, that's the NES game.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh,
I forgot.
Okay.
That was part of their what was it, the archive?
I just wanted to check your credibility here for a minute.
No, I forgot that was part of the console. I was looking at a couple different things and I got confused there.
This happened the same day as the Horizon Hunter's Origin, and I was more excited about Hunter's Origin than almost anything on this list. But that's my own personal taste. I talked to my kids who were excited about a number of different things. There's some in that sizzle reel. There are a lot of things that I already knew were coming out that I'm looking forward to. Star Trek Voyager Across the Unknown comes out in 2 weeks from now, which has been on my radar since I heard about it back in Summer Game Fest. The one that really stood out to me is Orbitals, which was announced previously, but we got a lot more gameplay out of it as Switch and I raved about Split Fiction at the end of our, the Superlative show, end of the year. Orbitals looks like an anime Split Fiction in terms of two-player kind of co-op puzzle solving. It looks a whole lot of fun. So that was the one that really stood out to me.
Yeah, I like the art style. It's kind of the old school, like Robotech kind of type anime. So pretty cool. Game Logic, anything that jumped out at you if you had a chance to check anything out there?
Yeah, I mean, I've been bullish on the notion of Pragmata, so I'm hoping that it sticks the landing. I think that game is out in late April or maybe May, sometime in that time frame.
It's April, I think, because there's a demo out now, actually.
Yeah, I'm deliberately. I mean, from a few years ago where we all went very hardcore on demos, like I promptly burned out, and I was like, I'm not playing demos anymore. Again, my byline, my cliche is finish your game, test your game, put your game up for sale, and I will gladly purchase it if I don't hear bad things about its performance. I was also really excited about Turok Origins. I haven't been a huge fan of the asymmetric kind of games, and so it's a little, I won't say weird, but it's like a thing that Horizon Hunters, we're talking about, which has asymmetric gameplay to it, and this will have asymmetric co-op to it. So waiting to see exactly what that looks like, but I am excited about it, and from the things that I saw, and the notion that it's going to be on Switch is interesting. What was interesting from a marketing perspective is super long sizzle reel. I was really when the sizzle reel started, I was like, wait, what? And then they packed just a ton of games into it. I was really amazed. I'm also keeping my eye on Star Trek Voyager Across the Unknown. I'm waiting to see exactly kind of how that game is put together, because it's kind of a game that does everything. You have starship combat, you have other forms of combat, you have kind of XCOM city builder, upgrade your headquarters type of gameplay to it, and then there's a survival piece to it as well. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I was very confused on that game, because I was like, the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, it's kind of a ship combat, and I kind of missed the rest of the trailer. So then I went back and watched it. I'm like, wait a minute, then they had a Fallout Shelter type of thing, where you're building your I guess it's the ship, I'm assuming. But yeah, it looks really.
It's basically the pitch is that you are starting from the beginning of the series and making your way through the events of the series with the ability to make choices. So maybe it doesn't play out the same way it did. You can save somebody or kill somebody, but you are, part of the Voyager kind of hook was that it's damaged as it was thrust across the galaxy and is making its way back across quadrants, and you having to keep your ship up without having the ability to be in a space dock. So there is the kind of crafting and survival piece to it.
Yeah, I'm seeing comments in the chat that people are saying that they've either played or have heard from other gamers they trust that Pragmata seems like it's coming together pretty well. My one detraction is it's a Capcom game, and it seems like that Resident Evil engine doesn't run any Capcom game good except Resident Evil. So it seems like every time they try and put it together, it's got performance problems. So I don't know where exactly I'm going to play it. So that's going to play into it. If I play it, we'll just have to see. But I've found it super interesting. This is also a game that was announced like literally in 2020 at the beginning of the generation, and it's 2026, and we're getting it. So we'll see. And then things that I was excited by, just the notion of Shadow Tactics, Blades of the Shogun. That was a game that I played at least a chunk of on PC. So nice to see it on Switch, available in portable version. And then obviously the Resident Evil games. And then I was super excited from an industry perspective to see Xbox finally show up on Switch 2. As I mentioned, I kind of thought that they would have been there on day one, given how loud they are about putting games on every platform, and kind of I feel like industry shaming everyone for like not doing the same thing. So, Fallout 4 Anniversary Edition showing up, neat. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle showing up on Switch 2, neat. It hasn't been a game that I've been interested in, but, on Switch 2, that may be, low enough in my gaming ecosystem that, I'll give it a spin there. And then Elder Scrolls Oblivion Remastered on the Switch 2, be interesting to see those games show up and become part of the catalog. To Xbox's detriment, I'll say, might be the only way that you get people in Japan to actually play an Xbox game.
Maybe, yeah. All right, let's jump into the next couple news stories. I think these are yours, Game Logic. You're gonna jump into them real quick.
Yeah, so I'm not even going to bring these up on screen. Obviously, there's a State of Play broadcast for this week, I think on Thursday. I'm not going to get into what people think is going to show up at State of Play, for the reason of the next topic that we're going to talk about very quickly. Shorten the title. So Valve veteran Imperiously Scorns reports that it secretly finished Half-Life 3 and moving devs to other projects. In quotes, they've been done for months. They just sit on the game. They're just relaxing. So, this is, I won't go into the whole article, but this is a Valve veteran who worked there for I think 10 years and has since moved on, but kind of making a joke about all of the rampant rumors there have been that now not only are we getting Half-Life 3, not only is it guaranteed to be part of the Steam Machine launch, which is now significantly in question on when it's going to launch. Now it's supposedly complete to the extent that they're just moving devs to other projects and they're just putting it on the shelf waiting for it to launch. And this is a very long rant from him saying, basically reminding people that that's not how software development works in the gaming industry. Like there's always crunch. There's always down to the wire. Nobody packs up content and just sits on it, except, and I'm not pointing this at them as a criticism, except maybe Xbox, who says, has a big enough production pipeline now that, there's games that are ready to go, but they say, hey, we're going to hold off on that like for 6 months because like we can't have too many games piling up on top of each other. I've long claimed and asserted that like this notion that Valve needs Half-Life 3 to launch alongside the Steam Machine, to me, shows just a grotesque misunderstanding of what that device is, who that device is for, and what the landscape of the gaming industry is in the gaming market in terms of user demographics. Valve does not need Half-Life 3 to launch the Steam Machine. It's not a console. It's not going for that demographic. There will be some hop-ons who it brings over, some people who are PC curious, but that's not the centric demographic. The demographic will be a bunch of very small verticals, niche of niches, and that's how it's going to aggregate its user base. There's not like a broadly definable, like wide net being cast of people it's going to bring over, and it's not looking to capture the hearts and minds of a big bucket of people who kind of think along the lines of the console paradigm, and the things that were normally associated with that. What's kind of weird and funny to me is, all the claims about, they need Half-Life 3. Like, again, I think some of the people who make these claims, like, don't think about the last 3 consoles that have launched this generation and what titles those games have launched with. Because those games have not launched with some big system seller, right, title, right? Switch 2 launched, okay, there was Mario Kart. But Mario Kart's not some like great new innovative title with a bunch of glitz and glam and, high performance things that justify the hardware, right? It's just open world Mario Kart. And the launch lineups, I would say, of the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X also weren't like the traditional things that we've been accustomed with like the big 5, right? Where in past generations you had to have a big racer, a big shooter, a big, RPG, and all of these things with lots of graphical glitz and glam that showed off like why you needed to buy the console. So I think the reality is we've moved beyond that point, and Valve doesn't need Half-Life 3 to launch. And how that interconnects back to PlayStation State of Play. The only news about the State of Play is that there's a State of Play. Everything else around State of Play is all rumor, conjecture, and speculation. And unfortunately, as I've read, as I tightly keep track of like the gaming news, that seems to be here at the start of 2026 with the vast majority, like 80 to 90% of the news cycle is what somebody heard that NVIDIA is going to do, what somebody heard that Microsoft is going to do with Xbox, what somebody heard is going to be in the State of Play. There's very little tangible news and an incredible dearth of actual objective evidentiary analysis that is going on. It's all punditism and punditry and propagandism, and it's really just sad and pathetic, arguably worse than I've ever seen it before. It's just everything is about what some insider has leaked, and I'm like, I can't imagine content that I would need to be bothered less by. So sorry, that's my rant and my only coverage of those 2 articles.
Okay, DB, any comments on anything there?
I'm not even going to talk about it until after it happens.
Okay.
Then we actually have something to talk about.
Yeah, when we know what they're talking about. Yeah. So coming up this Thursday. All right, let's jump into round robin as we close out the show here. I'll start off. I got Balatro on the Nintendo Switch 2. I think it was just Nintendo Switch Edition, I think. But I previously had bought it on through Steam. I was playing on my PC or mostly Steam Deck, really. But I saw it on sale, so I was like, hey, yeah, what the heck? I'll play it. And of course, I've been sucked into it for the last few days. So I just bought it, I think, like Thursday or Friday, I think it was when I saw it. I just happened to jump into the eShop and was looking at stuff. But yeah, just, fun little card game, just if you don't know, just go out and buy it. Like, I'm not a big poker guy, like I never really was, but it's pretty fun. It's a pretty fun game. Game Logic, you have the next one, another Dragon Quest game.
Yeah, I won't spend a lot of time on it. Again, this has come up, recently on recent weeks, as DBQ and I have talked about it. The way this came about was I had to take a kid to swim practice earlier this week or last week. Decided I was taking my Steam Deck OLED. Which my Steam Decks I've recently wiped just because I've kind of been pivoting around like what gaming content like I want to be occupied by. And so I picked this thing up. It had nothing on it. And I said, okay, what am I going to put on it? I said, well, I think I'm playing Trails now. At the time I hadn't picked up Dragon Quest VII yet. But I was like, well, I think I want to play something that's kind of like Trails and kind of stay in the same kind of angle. And the only thing that I had like that in my Steam backlog was Dragon Quest 3 HD2D Remake, which is a 2024 game, which, as DBQ and I talked about, I think I bought and I never so much as like booted it. So I was like, well, now it seems like a pretty good time. Having fun with it. Again, it's very, very similar, at least in the combat, to Dragon Quest 7. So it kind of makes sense. Tao, you gave me the slander about the pixel art before. This is kind of a pixel art type of game. So, having fun with it. It offers, initially when you get into it, you feel like it's a game without much depth. but after you get into it, like about an hour or a couple hours, then you start feeling like, oh, okay, this is the Lego blocking that I need to do. Character progression, going through the tactics and setting things up, and then going about, living the adventure and experiencing the story.
Nice. DB, you got a few games or a couple of games, well,
Yeah,
3 games, I
so
guess, I
let's
suppose.
stay on the pixel RPG front here. So last month on Game Pass, they released the Final Fantasy I Pixel Remaster. And then in February, the beginning of February, Game Pass released Final Fantasy II, the Pixel Remaster. So I've been kind of chipping away at those, listening to some podcasts. The Pixel Remasters have been out for quite a while, so I don't need to. And these games are even older than that, right? Like I don't need to spend a whole lot of time talking about them. It's the first time I've really played anything within Final Fantasy II. But what it also made me do, just like Game Logic, is go back into my Steam library of some games that I had picked up last year that I hadn't had a chance to play yet. And one of those was Crescent Tower. And so Crescent Tower is published by Amada Games out of Japan and developed by a single developer, Kuri Koronek. Said that wrong. I apologize. But it is in the same vein. It is basically a Train Odyssey and Final Fantasy I. Like it looks like 8-bit. It has a very limited art palette and very much looks like the original Final Fantasy in its battle screens and its overworld map. In terms of going around, getting into battles, having turn-based battles. But instead of having an overworld that you're moving through, you are ascending a tower that story-wise only appears every 100 years. And so this is where the Train Odyssey part comes in, is that you are making your way through and you can see a little space around you. And then if you get a lamp, you can see a larger circle of space. And then if you get or buy a journal, you can map the space that you have walked. And so you can either be keeping track of it outside of the game, or you can be finding journals to map it within the game. And then, you make your way up the tower. It is punishing in all the old school 8-bit ways. But it's also one of those where it's enjoyable for what it is, in terms of it's a very small scope. It's impressive that, again, one person. And it's one of those where, just like Game Logic was saying, it's easy to throw on a Steam Deck and kind of chip away at it. As something else is on TV or something else is going on, I can grind a little bit, discover a few more rooms or figure out where the stairs are. But by the time I figure out where the stairs are, I've got to go back out of the dungeon to get more health and rest up and restock up on items. And so it's a very kind of iterative loop of gameplay, but it's also enjoyable, just like turn-based RPGs can be.
Nice. And last few games I have real quick. So last year when I got the Nintendo Switch 2, I was kind of going back and kind of just seeing how like older Switch games were playing on it. I kind of fell off during the summer and fall and stuff. Stuff happens. So I jumped back into it this past couple weeks. Through Skyrim, I threw Skyrim back in there. I had played that actually last year too, but this time I actually bought the anniversary edition. It was just like a $5 upgrade, I think, or so, something like that, $5-10 upgrade, since I had the base game already, or the old game. So I'm going through that and just playing that, getting used to that again, and just realizing that I don't know why the bears and saber-toothed cats are so strong in that game, but they are. So I am pretty early on in the game though still, so I guess I am kind of weak, but I just forgot how punishing those enemies are. Threw on some Mario Tennis Aces. We got the new one coming out, I think, this week, I believe. I think I'll talk about here in a second. So I'm just, I was playing a few tournaments, the tournament mode and that one. I'm actually stuck on the campaign for some reason. I don't know why. I got to look up, I guess, because I can't figure out this one kind of puzzle thing that I'm on right now during this. So the campaign is kind of, I think you do some like regular tennis matches, but then there's other kind of like little mini games that you do tennis wise. Like there's one where you're like, there's the piranha plants are shooting at you and you got to hit the fireballs back at them, to hit them and stuff like that. So been playing that. And then Pokemon Quest, which I don't know. DB, did you ever play Pokemon Quest? I don't remember if you ever did or not.
No, I mean I know what I mean. It's voxel looking like Minecraft Pokemon.
Yeah, graphically,
right?
yeah, it's like that kind of voxel. I'm trying to think of like what the gameplay is like with other games, but I can't really tell. So it's an isometric view, and you don't really have control of your Pokemon. They're just moving along the boards or the the dungeons and stuff that you go into. So they just kind of move along by itself. But you do have control of their powers. You can hit them. And then there's a cooldown between each. Every time you use it. So you're kind of just doing that and clearing these boards, and then you get more points, and you get upgrade your your Pokemon and get new moves and stuff like that. So it's kind of fun. Like I kind of forgot about it for the longest time. I was just kind of scrolling through my list of games, and I saw it. I was like, oh yeah, I totally forgot about this game. So I've been actually playing that a lot this past weekend and last 3 days. So so those are the 3 games I kind of went back to this past week or a couple weeks. And then the very last game that I have is Tabs, Totally Accurate Battle Simulator, which I also bought on Nintendo Switch 2 because that was, once again, that was on sale. That was one of the reasons I bought Balatro 2. So I played this on, I think I had it on PC, maybe even, I might have even played on Xbox 2 at some point. I'm sure it was on Game Pass at one point. It might have been even the first time I played it. But it's just kind of this goofy, there's a battlefield that they plop you down in. There's the enemy army, which is, you can do AI. I think you can do online too. I haven't done any online battles. And then you set up your side to try to beat the other side, the enemy side. So, you start off pretty simple. Everybody just has like pitchforks, or I think even swords, maybe just like, just kind of crappy swords. And then you kind of level up, as you're playing, and you defeat the different levels, you kind of get more advanced troops. You get shield guys, you get bow and arrows, you get magicians, and all these other kind of stuff that you can just like plop down and fight against each other with. So it's fun. It's kind of goofy. That's another one where it's not kind of voxel, not really voxel, but sort of kind of old schoolish, like 3D animated guys or characters. So it's just kind of a goofy game. So and there's been, I think, like a ton of kind of games like this too that have come out for different systems and stuff, but it's just a fun game. So yeah, been playing a lot of that, and that was mainly like a lot of Nintendo Switch 2 these past couple of weeks. Playing still a little bit. I actually went back to No Man's Sky. She didn't have a list, which is I had a urge to play it, which I guess kind of was good timing because I forgot the guy, the Hello Games guy, Sean Murray. He started tweeting out, like, he right when an update's about to hit, usually he starts to tweet out just like emojis basically. So he started doing that actually this past weekend too. So I must have been psychic or something, because I just started playing it. So hopefully there'll be some kind of update this coming week. That's usually within the week. He usually releases an update. So we'll see what happens this coming week. That is it for the round robin. Let's jump into releases for this coming week. We have coming on February 10th, Reloaded, coming out for Xbox Series and PC. That's like a heist game, right? I'm not sure who put that out. Is that DB?
Yeah, I put it on there. It's a heist game. It was announced this past summer. You are stealing artifacts back from museums to bring back to their original nations, or
This is the one from the developers in Africa.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, totally missed that game was coming out.
Yeah, and it's on Game Pass day one as well. So it's Xbox and PC.
Yep. On February 11th, we got Romeo's a Dead Man coming out for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Mario Tennis, like I mentioned before, coming out on February 12th for Switch 2. And we also have Yakuza Kiwami 3 and Dark Tides coming out February 12th for Switch 2, PS4, PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Also, February 12th, we have Blaze Blue Entropy Effect X coming out for PS5, Xbox Series, and Switch 2. I'm assuming that's some kind of RPG. I don't know who put that one in there.
Yeah, that's I think DBQ put it, but it's a JRPG.
Okay. Sorry, forget. Who's that by? Is it like Atlas or?
I don't remember who the developer is, but that is a franchise that very strangely and outside of the norm is a JRPG that's been on Xbox since I think the very beginning.
Wow.
The first Blaze Blue was on Xbox 360 at least, maybe before then. It's
Nice.
been one of the very rare JRPG franchises that has been on Xbox and stayed on Xbox.
Also, February 12th, we have Ride 6 coming out for PC, PS5, Xbox Series. I'm assuming that's some kind of racing game.
It's a motorcycle racing game.
That's right.
I think one of the few. I may have like an older version that I just grabbed to put in my backlog, but if I remember correctly, I think it's one of the very few that actually models some AMA Superbike tracks. So the American road courses, which just no motorcycle games really really model. So yeah,
Nice. And then finally, February 13th, we have High on Life 2 coming out for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Anything striking your guys' fancy there? I'm probably going to get the Tennis Fever, most likely, because I'm a sucker for Mario sports. But anything else you guys are looking forward to?
Yeah, I'm excited about Reloaded, the repatriation of it and the puzzle aspect of it. Reading some reviews, which are some impressions that are already out today. There's many of the artifacts in the game are real, and so they provide some history around it as well. Maybe all of them, but I've only heard certain ones. So yeah, and I'm curious what High on Life 2 ends up being compared to what High on Life 1 was. So curious, not necessarily nearly as interested as I am in Reloaded.
Nice. Game Logic, anything that you might buy or eventually, if not right away?
I think Reloaded I'm definitely going to buy right away. Just to support what I want to call it, a social cause that I'm supportive of. I've heard good things about Romeo is a Dead Man. Listening to the KFG Kind of Funny Games Daily interview with Suda51. So not sure if I'll pick it. I mean, the fact of the matter is I am unquestionably going to be occupied with, wrapping up Trails, continuing to play Dragon Quest VII, and then, chewing through, bits and pieces of Grid. Ride 6 would obviously be something that would normally be on my radar, but we'll have to see if that's in the window, whenever I get clear of stuff that I'm already working on now.
Nice. All right. I think we have some stuff to talk about the next week or this coming week. That is it for tonight. That is it for episode number 423. Next week, Mr. Game Logic will be on the main hosting duties with myself and DBQ Hams as co-hosts. Thank you, everybody who joined us in the comments or in the chat tonight. Ramon, looks like a Nate got in there right near the end. Thrifty, I'm sorry, I missed your Cyberpunk comment earlier. I would have liked to have gone into more detail on that one since I've been still plugging away at Cyberpunk also on the Switch too. But thanks to everybody for dropping in, and happy birthday for Ramon, who's looked like he's getting reloaded also. Thank you, DB. Thank you, Game Logic. Any last words before we head out? Nothing. All right. Thank you, everybody. Please have yourself a wonderful night. Have a wonderful week. Play those games out there, and we will see you next week.